All right, welcome everybody. Thank you. Thanks for being here today. We have a guest here, and really appreciate Colin Flanders from 7 Days being here today, just to talk to us about the article that he wrote, looking at the population changes here in Vermont. And I read it last week and was like, oh, this might be a really good topic for the older Vermonters Caucus. So I dropped him an email and thought, and he reached out and really appreciate you being here. Uh, it's great to see this population getting a lot more attention in the media. I know that there's also going to be some information, some reporting coming from VPR. Peter Hirschfeld's been in the State House talking about the issues that affect older Vermonters as well. So I think this is important work that our journalist partners are doing here, and I'm glad you're here, Colin. And I guess if you want to say a few words about how you came to writing this article, I really want this to also be feedback to you from all of the advocates and representatives that are joining us here today. Can talk about like where do we see this in the future? Where do we see ourselves, and how can we all work together to make sure that older Vermonters have access to services and that are engaged in the workforce, and can be a part of the, really integral part of our community. So maybe you could just start by giving us some background on how you came to this story and maybe a few things. But I'll just turn it over to you. Thanks for being here.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'll keep this short. I mean, I know most people have probably read the story, and if not, it's probably not news to you all. You're not exactly the audience I am intending when I write a story like this. It's mainly the broader population who isn't exactly paying attention to these issues. I think a few things. First, I have heard a decent amount of feedback, especially from older Vermonters themselves, who made the case that they don't. They felt like the story was a little too negative, and they want to make sure that they are not being made to feel like they are a burden. And I completely get that, and that's something that moving forward with the series, we're going to have a lot more room to get into solutions, some of the creative ways that we're trying to leverage our aging population. I know that's a big focus of ours. But just yeah, so initially we wanted to set out kind of like a table setter story for this series to get everyone on the same page to highlight what we're looking at. And obviously, as we know, our population is aging, and that has a lot of implications. So the story hopefully lays those out in pretty sobering terms to say that here's where we're headed, here's what we know, and here's what's being done about it. And so I hope that it initially kind of catches everyone up so we're all on the same page. And now moving forward, we're going to have a lot of opportunities to look at specific issues. So for example, the next one we're writing, I think, is in a few weeks. I should probably figure out my deadline for that. But it's about workforce, and in particular about older Vermonters in the workforce. We know what between 20 and 25% of people over 65 continue working. Some of those people are working because they want to, because it gives them purpose, because they have a lot of energy. The other side of that is people who are continuing to work because they have to, and maybe they don't have the retirement savings that they wish they had. So we're hoping to talk to people on both sides of that, as well as look at what are businesses doing to make their jobs more attractive to older Vermonters, knowing that as our workforce skews older, that there is a real potential and an opportunity to harness that power, but it has to you have to make your jobs appealing to somebody who's in their late 60s, early 70s, and maybe doesn't want to work full time. So those are some of the things that we're also going to be taking a look at. I'm really interested personally in some of the more personal aspects of this, and the caregiving, and the how do we manage, where do we live. That's a big topic that I'm really interested in. I mean, personally, all four of my grandparents are still alive, and I think about them a lot because on one side is my My dad's mother, they live in a two-story house right up on a riverfront. It's getting harder and harder and harder for them to get up the stairs. I always wonder. I worry about them, especially in some of the bad weather days. And then on the other side, my grandparents are pretty well off, and were able to build a new house maybe 10 years ago with aging in mind. And so it has all of the accommodations you could hope for. Um, and I think that there are a lot of people out there who are more like the first set of grandparents I described. And so I'm just, we're kind of building the ship as we go. And so I'm really interested in hearing feedback from people on what issues we should be paying attention to, some creative ways to explore those issues. I want to make sure we're including the voices of older Vermonters in these stories. And yeah, we're going to be working on it all year. So there's a lot of opportunity. But maybe I'll end my spiel there. And if there's any questions people have, or if there's any feedback, or a story you would hope to see in this series, I'm all ears. But I'm mainly here to hopefully listen to you all.
Great, thank you. So we've got quite a few people here in the room and out in Zoom. Does anyone want to go first? Let's talk about some of the thoughts that we may have about the story, or some of the questions that Colin brought up. Gotta have a question. Someone's gotta, here we go. Andrea, awesome.
You know, you can count on me.
Right.
Jump in. Colin, I thought the story was great. I appreciate the feedback that you received from seniors, and I'll be reading it again tonight with that perspective at the front of my mind. As you probably heard from the conversation at the beginning before we got started, food insecurity is a huge issue among seniors. Many seniors, live on Social Security, and we're actually, I'm the director of a senior center in the New North End, the Heineberg Senior Center. We're doing AARP sponsored tax aid preps right now. And last week, one of our clients told me that he had received a very small increase in his Social Security payment, which cost him far more than that in his SNAP benefits. And so it was a net loss for him at a time when food costs are going up. And I actually, while I was there, emailed Dan, who just popped me right back and sent me off on, with a resource to send him to. But we work hard here to try to provide as much free food as we can to people. And I think that's just a big issue around the city and the county and the state. Transportation is another big issue. We're about to see bus fares reinstated, and the city is able to offer, or Green Mountain Transit, a 50% discount for seniors. So for a monthly bus pass, it's usually 50, it'll be 25 a month. Again, I have folks who come here from all around, not only the city, but the county, and several folks who rely on the bus who are really worried about not being able to come, which means not being able to come for meals or free activities. And I think it would be great. I will pop you an email with some more ideas. But those are two that just really rise up to the top for the seniors that I'm working to serve. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Andrea. Why don't we start with, how about Rosemary?
Colin, nice to meet you, and thank you. It was a great article. And I really appreciate the feedback that you received. SVCOA is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year. And one of the themes of this year is to stomp out ageism. And so I appreciate you saying that you'll look at it from a different perspective through all the other articles. And I couldn't agree more with, I forget who was just speaking.
Andrea.
Andrea, I couldn't agree more. Her transportation, we live in such a rural state that transportation for the outermost communities, it gets very difficult when there isn't a transportation provider or funds available to get them into a senior center or some wellness activities where they can integrate with people and have and reduce some of that social isolation that they feel in those outer communities. So I would agree, transportation and social isolation should definitely be some topics to further explore.
Yes. Thank you for that, Rosemary. And we had Ross Connolly, who's here a couple of weeks ago looking at microtransit and the need for volunteer drivers to help with these programs. There's such a shortage. So I think it's kind of all of us using our social networks to get the word out and help find volunteer drivers to meet that need. I think will be really helpful. I can probably follow up with some information that he had sent out in the notes after this, with some information on how to connect volunteers with transportation programs wherever you are in Vermont. But definitely a good point. For sure, transportation is always an underlying issue. Megan, I'll get you next. I'll get you.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks for doing this, Colin. And I'm really psyched that it's a year-long project too, because I think there's so many different aspects. I think that's really great. Matthew did get in touch with me because we were talking about, he had asked for some suggestions, and one of mine was about caregiving and, the sandwich generation of lots of us and younger, I'm older now, dealing with parents and their kids, but also I had sent Matthew to somebody who's taking care of and has just adopted her great-grandchildren. So she's taking care of grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Her husband has died. She's doing it all by herself. She's lower income. So there's a lot of more and more grandparents are taking care of grandchildren with so many of the other issues going on. And housing, with the big article about the hospital who is they're filled with beds of people waiting to get into long-term nursing, is a huge issue in terms of housing. And then that clogs up the hospital for other people trying to get in there for their services. And also I wanted to mention homelessness among seniors. And the statistic I've heard is 20% are 60 years and over. And I don't know if that's just the Burlington area or if that's statewide, but that would be a great thing to include. And food insecurity is, I run hands and we get food to seniors who are low income and filling gaps in different ways. And that's just huge. And that's the percentage has increased since COVID has waned, and that's really distressing. So all those programs that were happening are gone, and it's getting worse. So thank you so much. Your brain's going to explode.
Thanks, Megan. And you are correct to bring up the point about the 136 people that are aging in hospitals. We have to think of them as homeless as well, because they really don't have a home. That's not a good place to age. I'm going to jump to the room. Leonore?
Yes. Hi. So I wanted to thank you for that great, 23 years ago, I moved to Vermont and started as an AmeriCorps at Home Share Vermont. And learned and worked part-time at the Converse home. And, so I bring that perspective with me, and I sit on House Transportation. And so these issues around transportation are definitely, at the forefront of some of the discussions we had. I guess in thinking about other articles, I would also just, thinking about like highlighting some of the creative solutions around, such as the volunteer drivers. But I feel like any interconnections with multi-generational settings that I think solve a lot of the issues of isolation, lack of transportation, companionship, health, right? It's almost like a public health benefit to live intergenerationally. I think we've seen studies that prove that. You know, how do we deal with that in a state that's rural? And we have this also kind of interconnection that I saw, especially working at Home Share Vermont when we expanded to do a lot of the caregiving and live-in care. It used to be just sort of roommates, right? And then we expanded the program to do more caregiving. And it was really fun for me because I'm half Mexican and I grew up in Montreal, so I went to school in French my whole life. And it was really cool to be able to interview and be an intermediary for all the Congolese French speakers and Latino caregivers that were really the boots on the ground and taking care of so many of our seniors. And so I would love a perspective that speaks to that, those bridges, who is supporting our seniors, of the role of foreign-born populations in Vermont that never get highlighted. And also what the situation is for seniors who are also immigrants or refugees, because I brought my mom to live in Vermont, and her experience of isolation is like at a whole other level, right? Being a Mexican woman who's in her 80s in Vermont. And so those are just some thoughts to share with you guys. And thank you for highlighting all of this really important.
Yeah, home share is definitely on my list for the caucus coming up. We should definitely have that as one of our topics. So I want to be respectful of time. So let's we got a few hands up here, and then we're going to be talking about elder care clinician program here coming up. So I'm just going to go right across the top of my screen. Rick.
Hi, Colin. I'm Rick New. I'm with the Center on Aging at UVM. Two things I wanted to kind of highlight, and one of them is the lack of geriatrically trained social workers, especially in rural Vermont, and I think that is a need that we have, to be able to have providers, especially in the rural parts of our state, that understand the geriatric needs of the people. And the second piece of that is just healthcare in general, because a lot of our seniors are making decisions. Before coming to the Center on Aging, I was 20 years a chaplain at the medical center, and before that 20 years as a parish pastor. So, and a lot of people make choices on whether to have healthcare or not, basically based on finances. And so when we have difficulty in providing the care, the spots for people to get care, I should say, and then they have to choose as to whether they're going to pay for it or not, it's really an issue for folks. So that's what I have to say. And thanks for the article. I appreciated it.
Yeah, all good points, Rick, for sure. And that's some of the stuff we're working on in the legislative session this year as well. Mark.
Hi, Colin. Mark Boutwell, Executive Director for Senior Solutions, the Council on Aging in Southeastern Vermont. I'm just going to issue an invitation, and I would invite you to, I'm going to assume you're in the Burlington area. I'm going to invite you to come to Southeastern Vermont. That's the other part of Vermont that's not urban. And go on a Meals on Wheels ride along with one of our volunteers. There's nothing more enlightening and uplifting and just eye-opening to ride along with an 86-year-old volunteer who's driving around the back roads of Vermont and delivering meals to people who are just way up in the hills beyond imagination. And it will inspire you and enlighten you as to what it means to support older Vermonters here in the state, and how these people are existing and how they depend on these contacts and the meals. And by the way, at Senior Solutions, we also bring people pet food. And pets are such a critical piece of people's well-being. So an invitation, I'll put my email in the chat and you can reach out to me. I'll set up a time for you to ride along with the Meals on Wheels delivery person.
Thanks so much, Mark. I'll definitely take you up on that.
All right, so true, especially during this mud season. It's like the worst driving around on some of these back roads. So thanks for bringing that up. Definitely rural Vermont and Meals on Wheels and can be challenging this time of year. Breck.
Dan, thanks. And Colin, thanks for your article. I just want to add to Megan's and others' comments about caregiving from a different perspective. Megan mentioned grandparents who are taking care of kids and grandkids. In the other direction, there are younger folks who are needing to take care of their aging parents, and we have estimates of 70,000 caregivers in Vermont who are annually putting up the equivalent of $1.25 billion worth of value in caring for their parents or other family members. And often these folks are needing to make choices about their job, whether they're going to be able to keep their job and be able to take care of their family. And so many of us have been advocating for many years about paid leave programs for people to be able to do this. If you're with a bigger organization, that's possible, but there are a lot of smaller businesses who just can't afford this. And so this is a big issue and something that deserves some attention. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Tracy.
Hi, everyone. I'll be very brief, but Colin, I'm sure you have seen the Age Strong plan for the state of Vermont. I think it is something that you could heavily rely on. All that work has been done by the state. I see Angela Smith-Jang, who is the Adult Services Division Director. I'm sure that she would be a great contact for you as well. But I think the Age Strong plan so beautifully, this timing of your series is so great, particularly because this plan has just been released. And it quite literally goes through how the state is going to support the various pillars to be able to help older individuals age at home in the setting of their choice. And it's a great roadmap for you to use as sort of a focus for continued segments in your piece. I just wanted to put in a little plug for Age Strong Vermont because it's such a powerful tool and I use it all the time.
Okay. Yeah, thank you so much for bringing that up. It's definitely how we need to tie all of our work to that plan to make sure that moving forward that we don't forget about it because there is a lot of work that went into that and it's some really important solutions in there. If we can all just remember that as we move forward with our work helping in this, helping older Vermonters. And so thank you for tying that back. Maybe have time for one more. Anyone out there want to bring up another topic? Yeah, Mary.
Yeah, I'll try to be brief as well, but thank you so much, Colin, for the article. And I'm with the Vermont Association of Area Agencies on Aging and just pivoting to the actual policies that we're endorsing in the state to help us age better and in a more healthy way. Sometimes in the communications world, those of us in aging policy and issues notice some othering, what we call othering. And that's when we sort of talk about old people over here on an island and the rest are young people. And the older people are kind of sucking the life out of the young people. I'm exaggerating for effect. But a lot of the policies we support are helping all populations, just across the board. So for example, housing. We obviously need more nursing beds and we obviously need more residential care beds, but we also need more housing, period. And that helps all of us across the board, including older Vermonters. That also helps across the generations as well. Long-term care obviously helps working Vermonters of many ages because they can rely on reliable quality care for their loved ones, right? So that's something we all need to support and hold up as well. Nutrition, nutrition for older people and also for children and families is critical because It is a prevention tool. It's a home and community-based service. It prevents serious illness and emergent, very expensive healthcare interventions, right? So this helps all of us, and it helps all of our families. Paid Family Medical Leave Act. That helps younger people like you. If you had a loved one that needed assistance, you could take it for yourself or as a parent. So a lot of the policies that we support in the aging world are helpful for all of us. And so we don't need to kind of corner off and battle each other for money. So, and again, I'm speaking in a bit of an exaggerated way, but, and I'm happy to talk to you more about policies. And I agree with Tracy, using the Age Strong Vermont document is really a great place to kind of see how all those principles are laid out. But thank you again for your article, and I look forward to your future articles.
Great. Well, thank you so much, everybody. This was incredibly helpful. I see there's a lot of things in the chat. So anybody who dropped their information in the chat, I'll write that down. I'll get in touch with you. And I imagine maybe I'll just attend another one of these meetings at some point in the future. And feel free to reach out anytime. I mean, we're always happy to hear the feedback, and this is really helpful. So thanks again for having me.
Yeah, we're glad you're here today. And the Zoom link's the same every week. So, but I'll make sure you're on it so you can see what topics we'll be talking about. So great, thank you. That was some really kind of popcorn all over the place. So thanks for all that input, definitely today. So I thought we would take the second half of our caucus today and talk about the elder care clinician program. So I invited some folks from Washington County Mental Health, and so come on over. You guys have been appreciate being here today. Yeah, sure. So there was just I attached a two-pager that Jason put together from Dale with some background information that I sent out with the meeting announcement. And I thought it might be good to kind of dig a little deeper and then hear from the folks that are providing the services. And I know this has been a priority of the Human Services Committee to make sure that there's some adequate funding for a program that we basically have been cutting the funding from for years because we're level funding it. So I thought it'd be good to hear from the folks that are doing the work and the needs in the community, because this is something I've always been concerned about, making sure that we have access, individuals have access to the mental health care. So I'm sorry, I haven't met you.
Mark Schmall.
Mark, thank you for being here today, Mark.
You're welcome.
All right, you want to take it away?
You want me to kick it off? You kick it off.
Keith here.
All right.
Hi, everybody, friends, colleagues. My name is Keith Greer, and I am the CSP Director at Washington County Mental Health Services. And thanks, Dan, for inviting us today. You and everybody else that's doing this work give me faith in the democratic process. You keep my faith going. Leadership is hard. Leadership is hard in ordinary times, and these are not ordinary times. These are extraordinary times. So thank you, thank you, thank you. So, I'm going to share a bit of my experience. I'm a CSP Director. We serve 340 people who have it's not my label, but it's the federal label of severe and persistent mental illness. And they're aging too. So it is not an understatement to say that daily I am engaging in these challenges. Everything, and is Colin still out there? Colin, thanks for being a herald. Thanks for being a herald. It's an important role in our society right now. And you're doing a good job in that. And if you want to talk to somebody who's stayed in the workforce, one of my staff, 70-something years old, purportedly retired 2 years ago, but he still comes to the office every single day because he loves his job. I'm convinced of this. He loves his job. Purpose, meaning matters. So if you want to talk to somebody, reach out. So I'm here as a CRT director. I'm also here as I was a member of the Age Strong Vermont Committee. Today we're talking about our elder care bill, and yes, there's been a historical undervaluation of the work. I think you guys have the information about that. So I want to sort of come at this from the perspective of that committee and our good work, and I think we should be tying things in. Couple of takeaways for me from that committee. First of all, AHS, if you're out there, thank you, thank you, thank you. AHS, it's hard to herd cats. It is hard. And AHS did a wonderful job in helping us to elevate our thinking and getting the right information. Colin, that article, like many of us have been exposed to that information, having challenging conversations about what to do. So thank you, thank you, thank you, AHS. A couple of takeaways for me. One, I'm doing the work. I am exploring my bias in ageism, and I think it is really important. We're talking about these things, and I'm hearing this message loud and clear as problems, and they are. I don't want to minimize or invalidate. However, our aging population is also our strength. There's wisdom, commitment there, and we have to tap into it. It is going to be our saving grace. And number two, I'm just so appreciative of the state of Vermont. I love living here. One of our commitments was to look at this problem through the lens of equity, parity, and justice. What you have presented in front of you is equity, parity, and justice. It is directly addressing the problems that we are facing for the most vulnerable people, the impoverished people in our community. That's what this bill is representing. So I'm not going to say too much more because to my right is an expert and has been doing this work for how many years, Mark?
40.
40 years. And for those of you who know Carl Rogers, the most Carl Rogers person that I have ever met, unconditional positive regard. So questions and whatnot. Mark, would you like to say a few things before the
Sure. Well, thank you. It's a great pleasure to be here. Let me just tell you a little bit of the context of, why I'm here today. And I really would like then to be able to, answer specific questions, or if I can help related to the elder care program or just working with older folks in general and in community mental health. So I joined Washington County team back in 1987. I was a bit of a youngster in my early 20s at the time. And I was working primarily at that point in some of the last waves of deinstitutionalization from the old Vermont State Hospital. And being a bit of a youngster, the folks that I was working with were many, many older folks that had spent 30, 40 years of their lives in the Vermont State Hospital. And so I needed to learn really, really quickly about the issues and the challenges of the aging process, and particularly some of the incredible stories that these folks had had and what that was like to be in an institution for so long. I often say that maybe the formal education I've had kind of opened some doors for me, but I always have to acknowledge wherever I go that my real teachers and the folks that taught me this work were those initial folks that took a young person under their wings and kind of trained me what it was really all about, where the rubber meets the road and what the real deal was. And that was an education that I never got in the classroom. And I'm so grateful for that. And that's continued on for a long time because every day I learn something new from the folks I get a chance to meet with. So I'm the director of the counseling service for the community support program, CRT, that Keith works with. I've done that for a long time, and that's a team of therapists that do a combination of office-based therapy. We do outreach into the community, into folks' homes, whatever it is to kind of reduce barriers and stigma to building that relationship. I think because of my early experience and just how things have fallen, I've tended myself to work with a bit of an older population a lot of times, and I have appreciated that and valued that so much. And that kind of came around about 25 years ago, was asked if I would also direct our elder care program at Washington County Mental Health, which is embedded within our outpatient division, not within CRT. That is a team of therapists that we actually cover 3 counties: Washington, Orange, Lamoille County, well, and a little bit of a fourth, some of the border towns of Windsor County as well. And that's almost 100% outreach-based, providing services to folks in their homes, the counseling and the therapy that really, if we weren't bringing it to them, they would not have the means to get into an office for more traditional therapy at all. So we tried to stay pretty true to the original mission that the legislative body set up with the various area agencies on aging around the state a long, long time ago. And so that's been my joy to be part of that over the last 25 years or so. I also, in addition to supervising a couple of programs, I meet with about 20 to 25 folks a week myself, so I much more enjoy it probably than anything else, trudging through the mud and the snow and getting out there into the community and seeing with folks. I've often thought that whatever I might bring, if anything, to the supervisory or management roles that I've had, it's only based on what I've been able to do to keep my hand in the work and actually meeting with folks day to day, because I think that's really where it's at and where I learn the most and sort of what feeds my own soul, I guess you could say. So that's a little bit about what I bring to the table. I haven't come with any flashy data or stats or PowerPoints, but I would love to, if I can, give a sense of maybe not so much the heady knowledge of the elder care program. There's others here that will know that much more than I do, I suspect. But if I can speak to kind of the heart of the work or anything that would be helpful for you to know about what it's sort of like, the work, what we're seeing, challenges, gaps, whatever, I would be just pleased as anything to kind of hear what would be most helpful for you all to know.
So with your experience, 40 years working in this, what do you think the need is now, coming out of COVID? Where are we in terms of over your past history? How would you say things are in terms of the services that individuals need to be able to age successfully?
Yeah. Well, I think it speaks to probably one of the biggest gaps that we're experiencing. This may not be, indicative of all the elder care programs around the state, because, most of the DAs have one or some form of that in place. But our biggest challenge within the last year has been staffing shortages. We have had a really stable, steady, strong elder care team for most of my tenure here. And then this past July, we had a 30-year staff member at Washington County that worked the last 10 years in the elder care program with us retire. That position, although our recruiting folks work very hard, remains vacant to this day, with not even one resume or inquiry into the position in that time. Had another staff person that been with us for a few years that just switched jobs, something a little bit more to her background and training. And that was in November, and the same situation that no inquiries or resumes or any really opportunity to talk about the position with anyone. So that is a real change. For me, that has been a very different experience. We haven't had a lot of turnover, thankfully, in the elder care program over the years, but when we have, it's been very, very quick, usually maybe a matter of just a couple of months until we had somebody else in that position. So not so much a service gap, but it is. And if you can't get out there and do the service with the staffing shortages, and still not sure what to make of that or what the solution to that is. I think it's one of the greatest jobs in the world. And I'm not sure how to convey that more enthusiastically. Maybe I'm not that bubbly a person, but maybe I need to be more like Keith, I'd be getting the world to apply for it. But
can I add, and I think that, you guys are privy to all the information about the staffing crisis that we have all across our system of care, I'm sure. One of the things we need to talk about is compassion fatigue. You asked in the wake of COVID. I've been doing this a while, and compassion fatigue, we've talked about it in our work, the helping professions for, decades. COVID hurt us. Burnout and compassion fatigue is very real. And so here we are. One of the strategies is how do we continue to have our aging population engaged with purpose and meaning in our work? It's something that we as employers and as a system of care need to be flexible so that we're not burning people out. Like it's something that we have to sort of continue to work on, in my own opinion.
Yeah, thanks for thinking. We need to think about both sides of the equation for sure.
And I think service needs, so some of the gaps that are there, perhaps since COVID particularly, I think if you look at the, the data that I have received pretty regularly, if you looked at the elder care program, I think across the state, reports that I'd seen, that usually you have a couple of issues or major concerns that rise to the top that get folks involved in the elder care program. And that would be depression primarily, anxiety, but often anxiety more connected to adjustment issues and changing health situations, changes in residence, loss of support systems through friends or whatever that might be. And that's continued to be true. always been an element of, I think, isolation, but that's the piece of it that really, I think, showed itself in a whole different way through the COVID pandemic. And so you think of what that effect of isolation from others does to those adjustment issues and the depression, and how that would just increase and exacerbate that. And that's certainly what we saw. I was thankful that at Washington County Mental Health, with the support of our leadership, we were able to keep going pretty strongly through the COVID pandemic, and our team got to see most of their folks. I probably had about 85% of the folks I meet with that I was able to still do face-to-face meetings with throughout the whole pandemic. And it was, I think, enlightening and sad to hear how much I would hear when I'd go in that I was like the only live person that would come in that they'd see like in the course of a week time. And I just thought of, what that would like. I got to go home to a family, had colleagues that I still associated with 6 feet away, maybe in a mask, but at least, you were there, you were engaged. But to think that that was maybe the only social face-to-face contact in the course of a week.
So as a legislator here in this building, if we had a constituent reach out that they had concerns about a parent or one of their friends, what's the best way to access services and to connect with the elder care clinician program?
Yeah, there's a couple of ways, and I think the elder care clinician programs do it a little differently around the state. So our process at Washington County is going to be a little bit different. A lot of agencies, and we do for most of our programs, have like a centralized intake number that you can call, and that sort of helps sort out what's going to be the service. And our intake folks at Washington County will take those calls if it's someone that is clearly going to meet the criteria, which really only are 2 for the elder care program, a minimum age of 60, and the individual really needs to be considered homebound, that they wouldn't be able to access this service through a more traditional office-based service. So that allows our pretty strapped, small, more limited resource program to really find that niche where these are folks that are not going to get the service if we're not taking it to them. Right. So our intake coordinator could get a call, but most of the referral resources that we get find their way to me directly. So the Council on Aging, Home Health, SASH, whoever the referral source might be, we have a referral form that they send to me with, here's a person that's interested in the program. Can you follow up? So that's how we do that. And there's some rationale behind that. If you go through a more traditional intake process, there can be a number of staff or a number of folks you might talk to before you actually get to the individual you're going to be working with. We have it pretty streamlined that after I get the referral, even though there may be a waiting list sometimes, and that has certainly happened, particularly with the staff shortages, but the person that's going to be reaching out to them is going to be the clinician that they're going to be working with. So it just keeps it one person, not getting confused, like who's this person with? Because we find that folks have so many services, like who are you with? What agency are you part of? And so it really just makes that a lot easier. So I think we're a little bit of an anomaly for how folks get to it, but they basically come through me or work to me, and then I sort of
Awesome.
Get on the list, manage that, and assign it to a clinician when they have an opening that comes up in that geographical area.
Okay, thank you. I want to get to Angela, but before, there's also a phone number that someone could call, Mary? Senior helpline number?
Our helpline number in the AAA is 1-800-642-5119.
Thank you. I did not know that off the top of my head, but I turned to Mary and I was like, do you know the number? So I just called on her. Thank you for being there. Angela, thank you.
Hi, thank you so much for putting the Elder Care Clinician Program on the Older Vermonters Caucus agenda for today. And thanks so much, Keith and Mark, for coming to speak about it and sharing the good work that you all are doing. I believe that when the Elder Care Clinician Program was created in 2000, so 24 years ago, it was looking ahead at our aging population and saying, if we can keep people at home and take care of their mental health at home, then that actually will prevent the need for higher cost care and institutionalization. So it's part of our home and community-based service system, and it's reaching a population that would otherwise not be reached. It has a special place in my heart, having heard so many great stories about people being served by the elder care clinicians over the years. that I know is doing exactly what you're talking about, preventing isolation and supporting people's overall health and well-being. So just if folks didn't have a chance to open up that that snapshot, I just really wanted to reiterate the fact that the program's been around a long time. It has a really specific purpose and mission. It's been meeting that mission. And it is true that it has the same amount of funding that was provided in the year 2000, that,
Yes.
that it hasn't been increased. So, you know, looking at our demographics, we're certainly in a different place than we were 24 years ago.
Yeah, thank you for that. So true. I also just wanted, a couple people have sent me some asking to be added to the mail list, and I just so my mailing list, I don't have control over it, but I have this form that Meg created for me. I put the link in the chat, sign your friends up, distribute it widely if anyone wants to be added to the weekly email list. And what I do is at the on Mondays, Meg sends me the list. I send it off to our IT department and they add it to the list. So that's the amount of control I have over our email list.
It's chaos theory. Chaos theory.
So thank you. But you can add like other people that you work with that you think should be on here. It's fine with me. Pretty straightforward. And thank you, Meg, for your help with that, because some days I don't know how I get through the day. All right. So are there any other questions we have? Anything anyone wants to bring up? I know there was a lot of good talk before we actually got started, but this is the time before we have to go back over there. So, all right. Well, great. Well, we'll see you all next week. I have maybe it'll be home share. I'm going to reach out to Rick Singari, I think is my contact there. So maybe that's what I'll have for next week. I'm not sure yet, but we'll get there. This is definitely going to be a busy week for your legislator with the crossover happening. All our policy bills need to be out Friday. And come next week, we're going to be sitting in the House chamber all day and into the night. So yes, it's that time of year. So thank you so much. Have a great week.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.